Hi there, welcome back. So today's video we're going to show you how we made our sign for craft fair events. So we've given you in front of you, I'm showing you a rectangular shaped canvas, just regular canvas you can buy from an art supply shop, and some acrylic paints. Now some of the paints we use, some of them we don't use. Some of them that are in the bottles there with the spout lid type tops are pre-made, ones that I've mixed with PVA, a mix of PVA glue and water. The others that are in the screw tops aren't. Now, first of all, with most canvases, they'll come with these little wooden, little wooden pieces or little, rectangle pieces of wood with a slightly pointed end at one end. Those are so you can stretch out the frame on your canvas so that your canvas then is nice and taut for you to be able to then do your paint effect or whatever you're going to use it for. Now all I'm doing here is I'm taking one piece at a time, and they're in one of the little slits that's all pre-made, that already there in the frame, pressing it down into it, and then another one in the corner like I've just shown you there in the right angles. So I'm going to try and give you a bit of a close-up. Can you see the two slits? So you've got one going horizontally and one going vertically, and all you do is you take the pointed end part of this piece of wood, these little I don't know what you'd call them, shims, I don't know what they're called, to be honest, and you just place them in like that. Now you can give them a little gentle tap with a hammer, a small hammer obviously, just to put them in a little bit further if you wish. There you are, it's me just demonstrating there. And then once you've done that, the canvas should be lovely and taut, and if you tap it on the right side round, you will find that it sounds a little bit like a drum. If it doesn't, give it a very light spray or misting with some water, and then when that's dried, it should then sound like it. Now this is the next step. This is just some blue painter's tape. I mean, this is the tape I like to use if I'm working on a canvas, and all I'm doing is just measuring out a length of it and then sticking it to as far and as close up to the edge of the canvas as I possibly can. Now all this does is just protect the underneath part of the canvas so it doesn't get messy when you're painting. Now you can do a double layer of this, so it's doubled the depth if you want. It depends on how mucky you think your gloves are going to get, because you're going to, with some of these things, you pick the canvas up and you manipulate the paint across the canvas by tilting it and so on. And obviously every time you pick it up, you're going to get paint on your gloves, you could get paint on the back. It's just to try and keep it neat and tidy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a choice as to what colours I'm going to use, and then maybe just blend it in using a brush or maybe that yellow spreader. So this is what you can see me doing in the time lapse. I've literally just opted to pile it on as it were, and then use that yellow spreader. That's just a regular yellow spreader. You use whatever you feel happy. If you feel happy using a thin, wide brush, then use that. And then I'm going in afterwards with smaller brushes and just adding a little bit of detail with some of the colours. I love the way, the effect that this has. Absolutely love it. I've also gone round the edges with a brush, all around the edges of the canvas, just to make sure that they are coated. So here's a bit of a close-up. You see the colours there, the gold and so on. So any of the colours I thought got a little bit lost in the initial painting, I then went back in with them and just put them in a bit more detail. Here we go, it's a bit more of a close-up. Now you can see some little lumps and bumps. That is where maybe some of the paint was a bit thicker than others. But then left it to dry. Now this is 48 hours later. It must be completely dry before you do the next step. And obviously this sign needs to say our logo or our name or whatever design you decide to put on it. So we have these stencils that we purchased, came through, and measured it out. I handed it over to Wayne and said, look, this is the typeface that I'd like, the kind of lettering. And then he plotted it out, and he's just showing you here how he then, with a pencil, a sharp pencil, lightly drew in the edges of the stencil across there, and not that you can see it very well there, managed to get in the words Lottie Jasmine Designs. Now the G in designs had to be raised up slightly because there wasn't enough left of the canvas to put it on the lower level. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. Now he's using a Deco Art pen in gold, and this is the thin nib. So not the fat nib, the thin nib. And he's just carefully tracing round the outer edge of the penciled line from the stencil to get that shape, the border of the letters. And he did this with each of the letters. There will be a bit of a time lapse coming up showing you him doing that, because it takes time to do this. Do make sure that you're then, when you've done the letter, you're then not leaning over it to do the others until it is completely bone dry. Otherwise you risk smudging the pen or smudging the paint that comes out of the pen. So here we are, this is him on a time lapse, not working this quickly I might add. Just, he did really take his time doing this, colouring it all in, and you can see it, it's just coming to life. Absolutely love this. Love to see this process as well. Really, these pens, Deco Art pens, my absolute favourite when it comes to if you want gold or silver chrome effects. So here's a bit of a flyover. You can see what he's done. Now you do need to leave it another 24 hours to let it completely dry. It needs to be bone dry for the next bit as well. This is just to avoid smudging, so he's just showing a bit close up. Now you can, if you're happy, just leave it at that. But we wanted to create a bit more definition to it. We thought it looked a little bit flat. So to start with, we're going in with a very fine tipped black pen. And again, this is a time lapse. He's just tracing around the outline of the lettering there, which is obviously what you can see him doing. Just very carefully going around each one of them. As I said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can make these outer lines as thick or as thin as you wish. But obviously our aim was just to get it so that it got a bit more emphasis, a bit more, it was a bit bolder. I mean, some people would be saying, well, it's already gold, that's already bold enough. But wanted it to really stand off the page so people could see it and read it and knew exactly who we were. Because when you're at craft fairs and you've got your stall and so on, or craft fetes and markets and things, you need to be able to draw people into your stall, to your stand, to see what you've made, to encourage them to buy. And one of the ways you can do this is by having a really catchy sign, you know, something that's really attractive, catching, pleasing on the eye, and oh yeah, oh look at that, you know, and then they look down and have a good look then, hopefully, at everything that you're trying to sell. So it's promotion, it's promoting your name, your brand. Now, happy with all the black outlining, we decided we wanted a bit more of a raised effect on the lettering, and the best way of doing that is by using some UV resin and a UV light. So warning, there will be a use of a UV torch coming up, so if you're a bit sensitive to lights, then please feel free to fast forward to the end, or towards the sort of end-ish of this. But all Wayne's doing here is just using the J. Diction UV resin, favourite UV resin to use, that brand. It's wonderful. Now, this is not the really, really runny kind. I'll have to check actually to see what kind it is. But all he's done is he's put enough on, something he feels that's enough. He's doing a bit of the lettering at a time, the detail, and he's just using a little cocktail stick. You can use a mini stir stick, you can use a micro brush, just pushing it out to the edges of the lettering and then using the UV torch to cure it. Now, he'd repeated this process with every one of these letters, and it is a step that takes a lot of time, as I said. If you don't want to do this, then by all means don't do it. You don't have to do it. If you're not going to do anything else, one thing I would suggest you do, though, is maybe apply a coat of varnish to the whole thing. Now, we didn't do that because it was our intention to do this with the lettering and then see what we thought, and then make our minds up as to whether or not we were going to apply varnish or leave it as it is, or maybe apply a flood coat of resin. We decided against doing the flood coat, and we stuck with just having it as it was, even without the varnish. But if we do feel it needs varnishing, then we can do that, at a later date. So here we go. As you can see, he's just continuing to do that letter, filling it in, the little detail by little detail, and then going in with the torch. Of course, you can see Wayne's not wearing gloves. I would recommend, if it was me doing it, I would be wearing gloves because I've got high sensitivity to resin, UV resin and epoxy resin. I'm all right with eco resin though, which is great, with the eco pores version of this, but obviously you couldn't do that with this. The alternative to doing this kind of thing would be, you could, if you have got a mould with the alphabet in it, see if it's big enough and actually make individual letters using resin, epoxy resin, in the moulds. You could fill them, you could colour them with a solid colour pigment. You could put mica powder in them. You could put all kinds of things in them, flowers, butterflies, glitter, whatever you like. And you could spell your name out that way if you wanted to. Because, of course, you could adapt this and have this as a sign, as a little plaque sign on the door of a child's bedroom. Or maybe on your door of your bathroom if you want to do that. Or your office if you're at home, you've got a home office, and so on. What you can see Wayne doing here, now this is completely dried, this UV resin now, completely cured. He's just going back over some of the outlining of the letters with the black, just to make it just a bit more bold, because he thought it actually needed it. And there's a piece of paper there. Now he's got that down over the remaining letters so that he doesn't smudge anything. Or mark anything, because he didn't want to ruin or damage anything that was already there. There's the G. Do you see what I mean about the G? Now, obviously, the circular part of the G, the top part, would normally be in line with the I, the bottom part of the I. But because we didn't have the canvas wasn't deep enough, we couldn't do it like that. So we've had to do it like this. So that is raised up slightly. Yes, we could have maybe rearranged some of the lettering, but we did look, and this was the best way of doing this, because the canvas was not long enough to have Lottie Jasmine Designs all in one length. It wasn't long enough to have Lottie and Jasmine on the same line level either, as you can see. Hence why it's been stepped in the way it has been. But this was it. Now, before we get to the final shots, I just need to add that we also added in some eyelet screws at the very top into the wooden frame part of the canvas, and then we suspended it over an up and over display bar that we have for our stall, for our stand for craft markets and craft fairs. That's how we secured it in place, and we had a lot of lovely compliments on the day from it. So again, this is the final shot. Really hope you've enjoyed this video. We thought we'd put it in there, see what you think. Give us a like, share and subscribe. If you've joined us in the live chat, hi and bye to everybody in the live chat. We really appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you again in a few days' time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.